Hello and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. I'm Claire Pride, filling in for Annette Young. Coming up, anti-abortion and pro-choice activists gear up for a referendum on reforming Ireland's abortion laws. Thousands of Irish women travel abroad for a termination each year. And a Me Too moment in the US Congress. Democratic women wearing black to show support for victims of sexual misconduct. We'll look at what's next for the women's movement in the US with Joanne Sandler, a senior consultant with Gender at Work. We start with Ireland's government formally committing to holding a referendum on reforming the country's strict abortion laws, with passionate reactions on both sides of the argument. Currently, the procedure is only allowed if the woman's life is in danger. So thousands of women go abroad for an abortion each year or take a pill without any medical supervision. The government aims to hold the historic vote in May.
It's a right most women in Ireland have never had. Since 1983, the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution has ensured unborn children the same rights as expectant mothers. The law was altered 5 years ago after nationwide outrage over the death of Savita Halappanavar, who was prevented from ending her pregnancy.
We wanted to have the baby, but because the baby wasn't, they couldn't, save the baby. We decided to, we requested for termination again and again, but we were told, the law there wouldn't permit.
Ireland now allows abortions only in cases where the mother's life is at risk. The Irish government is expected to hold a referendum in May, asking voters if they want to keep the constitutional restriction or repeal it. Restrictions send thousands of Irish women abroad for the procedure every year and lead thousands of others to purchase abortion pills online. Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, who once described himself as pro-life, said that his views have changed and he will be campaigning for repealing the Eighth.
So we already have abortion in Ireland, but it's unsafe, unregulated and unlawful. And in my opinion, we cannot continue to export our problems and import our solutions.
Repealing the Eighth Amendment would clear the way for lawmakers to propose legislation allowing unrestricted abortion up to 12 weeks into pregnancy.
Well, we certainly know from having conversations with women, with men, with people all around Ireland, that people really want to discuss the issue and they want comfortable spaces in which to do it. And to have a conversation based on the reality of women's lives and the reality that couples are facing in pregnancy.
A recent opinion poll in the Irish Times found that 56% of those asked are in favour of the change. But it's a sensitive issue in Ireland where many people align themselves with the Catholic Church and the pro-life movement.
I think also that stories need to be heard of families who have faced very difficult pregnancies, families who've been told that their baby was not likely to survive. And those families need to be heard in this debate because many of those decided to continue with their pregnancy and are now members of the pro-life movement.
Yet with Ireland's decline in religious practice and its legalisation of same-sex marriage in 2015, a change in its restrictive abortion laws may just be a matter of time.
Some shocking figures out of India now. More than 63 million women are missing, statistically, in India. In other words, the country has far fewer women than it should have. And that's because families generally want boys more than girls, even wealthy families. So there are sex-selective abortions and many girls are neglected. A government report estimating that more than 21 million girls are unwanted by their families. Like actresses at the Golden Globes, Democratic women wore black for the State of the Union address. Hollywood and Washington showing support for the Me Too movement. Now, Donald Trump didn't mention women's issues in his address. Then again, this is a man who's bragged about sexual assault and been accused of rape. And some of his policies are hostile to women. Women's health, at least. That's one of the reasons women marched across the US again recently. So, after a year of Trump, what's next for the women's movement? Let's go now to New York and speak to our guest Joanne Sandler, a senior consultant with Gender at Work and co-host of the podcast Two Old Bitches. Hello, and thank you very much for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, the women's movement in the US has gone from shock and anger a year ago to setting an agenda. What are the priorities in the coming months? Abortion rights, perhaps?
There are so many things on the agenda, Claire, and certainly a woman's right to choose is on the agenda. I think what we're seeing that is so encouraging is so many people, women in particular, using their power and privilege to step up and be a part of this process. And so what's important is to be able to reflect what the local issues are, to do local organizing, and to make sure that that rises up. There will be countless issues that come up, but the big question is what we have to stay attached to. And the big question is, do we want a racist, misogynistic, oligarchic country that has very few opportunities for a small group, or are we committed to replacing the infrastructure of democracy and creating and maintaining an inclusive democracy where people have equal rights and equal opportunities? I thought one of the signs at the march signs are always one of the most amazing parts, and there was a sign that said, equal rights for more of us does not mean fewer rights for you. It's not pie, right? And so it's really about how do we change that mindset that if some people get more than they have, in other words, if there is a greater equitable distribution of opportunity, that is good for everybody. That is not taking things away.
Now, this year, the march's intent was power to the polls. A lot of effort is going into the midterm elections. And as we've talked about on this show, women are running for office in record numbers. But isn't this a movement of Democrats mainly?
The movement, I think, is about important values of equality and justice and inclusion. And if those values are more associated with the Democratic Party, well, that's a good thing. I think that a lot of the women who are running are trying to transcend party politics. The two-party system in the United States is clearly not working for anybody. And so I don't think women are running, even if they're running on a Democratic ticket, to become part of a machine that does not work. Women are running, and I think this is true of Democratic women and hopefully Republican women as well, to transform the party politics that we currently have. I think many people in the United States don't understand how backwards the United States is when it comes to women's political participation, and that we are, I think, in 100th place, in the 100th place in the world of having women's representation. So this is a huge cultural shift. And when it comes to issues, I think that the issue, again, is what kind of democracy do we want? And I would hate to see this fracture into very specific issues that are divisive. We really need to raise the level of the conversation. And so I think if women are able to communicate that we are the change, we are the promise of something different, something more equitable, something more just, I think that gives women a huge advantage.
Speaking out isn't easy for women wherever they live. Here in France, some figures have been released by the Interior Ministry that show that women are going to the police to report rape or sexual abuse a lot more now. To what extent do you think that's thanks to Me Too or the French movement, Balance ton port?
Yes, I think these movements are incredible. As someone who has worked on women's rights for 40 years, what we are seeing now is historic and so encouraging to have women everywhere standing up, speaking their truth, being heard, being believed, and supporting each other. I just want to say, I think one of the most encouraging things that I read was, after the Women in Hollywood came out with the Me Too campaign and the Time's Up initiative, 700,000 women farm workers, Latina women farm workers, wrote a letter to the Hollywood women saying, we have your backs, we know what you're going through. And then at the Golden Globe Awards, when famous actresses brought activists with them, that's a kind of solidarity and a kind of acknowledgement of each of the universality of what happens when patriarchy and masculinity become this toxic, is so important. And it is why I hope that after 40 years, we are seeing something that is really a huge cultural shift.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Joanne, for joining us. That was Joanne Sandler from Gender at Work. And finally, mixed reactions to the decision to scrap grid girls from Formula One. Some people hailing it, saying the custom is outdated and women shouldn't be used as props. They shouldn't be objectified. Women should be in the cars, not in front of them. Others saying grid girls are part of the sport's attraction. Feminists cost us our jobs, was the reaction of one grid girl. Now, I have to say, what's with calling them girls anyway? They're women. Who will be next? Ring card girls? Cheerleaders? I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's it for now. You can connect via our Facebook page, France24.51%, or send us a tweet at _51%. Thank you for all your feedback so far. Do keep those comments coming in. Until our next show, bye for now.